Hi, my name is Melanie Gamby. I'm an architectural designer at UVN Architects, and today me and my colleague Nick, who's an associate principal at UVN Architects, are going to talk to you about storytelling. I'm going to introduce you to some topics and tools to help you start your journey on becoming great storytellers, and my colleague Nick is going to give you a case study to give you a more concrete example of what it is to tell a story. So I'm going to start off and share my screen. So first off, welcome to Project Pipeline. This is going to be, as you know, a video on storytelling. First, I want to just comment and say there's no right way or order to tell a story, as long as your message is relayed clearly and convincingly to your respective audience. So just be aware that when you're telling stories, you want to be aware of who it is you're trying to tell the story to, because some people don't need as concrete and intensive a story as other people, and vice versa. And you'll start to see and understand that a little bit more as I go through some of the examples I have for tools. I also wanted to let you know that there are a good way to start to understand how to tell stories is to look at how other architects have told stories. And so here you can see are some websites that you'll be able to click on in the link below that talk about just different stories that architects have basically just not talk about, but show examples of different stories that architects have told. And also it's a really good resource just to see different types of architecture and just expose yourself to design in general. So why tell a story? There are many reasons why you want to tell a story. I'm just going to focus on a couple here, and that is to engage the client, the community, and yourself. Essentially, when I say yourself, it seems kind of funny, but you really want to tell the story for yourself as well, because it's really just sucky to kind of do something that you're not really engaged in and you don't really feel any sense of pride in. And to tell a story really gives you that sense of adventure while you're going through the design process. And also, this is a good way of providing a roadmap of documentation, again, in a way that's more adventurous and less kind of a slog where you're just going through the motions and just putting a bunch of documents together. So some basic design tools that you can use to start to tell your stories are sketch, diagram, model, and rendering and video. And essentially you'll understand how you want to start to use these tools as you go through the process of becoming an architect, but the goal in general is to have these tools start to define and solve your design problem. Because when you're telling a story, you're kind of outlining a conflict that your design is going to solve, essentially. So starting with sketch, I wanted to show you a couple examples. And so on this side, you can see Zaha Hadid's example of a sketch, and on this side is Pezzo's. And I just wanted to show you this kind of spectrum so you understand that when you're doing a sketch, it's not so important to be super accurate, nor is it important to I'm just saying you don't really want to put too much pressure on yourself to create this beautiful drawing, which is why I show you one that's a beautiful drawing, but on the other side, you can understand that a sketch could pretty much be anything. I'll show you a couple more examples just to give you more, but on the Zaha example, you see the sketch is trying to illustrate a gesture more than it is trying to illustrate a concrete vision. Just know that you have a lot of flexibility of what you can do with sketches. Here again are some sketches, and as you can see, they're using sketches to show you design build elements and to show you a vibe of your space. Sketches can be used so eclectically. There's no real concrete way of using a sketch. So the next tool that you can start to use is diagram. And diagrams are really interesting because diagrams you could start to use your sketch as a diagram, or you could create more of a concrete image. But diagrams, you're going to hear this word a lot when you go into school. And honestly, you'll never really be able to fully define what a diagram is. I would say in the least complicated way, a diagram is kind of like a simplification of your design concept. So if you can kind of tell your design concept in little words that aren't actual words but pictures, I would say that's the most basic way you can kind of describe a diagram. So as you can see on one side, this diagram is a block diagram, just kind of showing you the vertical circulation and the different blocks of program within the project. And on the other side, you can see this is showing you on a larger scale the way that the different elements of program are connecting to each other, and it's breaking them all out. So you can see, if I just want to focus on what is the living lab of this project, or what is the weave, it's showing you these elements. So by the way, this is a project by OMA. You're going to see some renders of it later on. Just the side note. And here is another way you can start to use diagrams, because diagrams are kind of nice because you can use them in a very artistic way, but you can also use them in a very a very methodical way where you're starting to talk about elements of your project in a very analytical way. So in this one, you're talking about the views, how they maximize those views, and are also looking at light studies and maximize that light access. So you can start to look at it in a more concrete way of research. So just so you know, diagrams are flexible like that, where you can start to use them in so many ways. This is another version of the diagram. Also, you're gonna see a lot of stuff at OMA, just so you know. I appreciate a lot of the work they do because they tend to do super illustrative work. So if you want to look at an example, I would say go on their site. You can see, and any architect site, if you see an architectural firm that you're really interested in, I would implore you to early on just start to look at the work that they do, because one, can't look too bad when you go to that firm if you want to apply and work there and you're talking about their work. I feel like they'd appreciate that. And also it gives you some exposure to what is really happening in the firm and in the world today. So I'll just put that down. You probably already seen Nikki's video talking about precedents. So that's just kind of a little extra about the ideas like precedents. This is like once you have your precedents, what you can do with them. So here you can see that they're doing a diagram that's really illustrative to what the emotions of each space is, which is a pretty cool diagram. Here as well, you can start to use diagram in photography. So if you're not a really good drawer, or you're not really good with like digital things, but you're epic at Photoshop, there's another way to start to use diagrams. Take pictures, build models. It could turn into a diagram that you start to use to illustrate what's going on in your project. So the third tool that I want to talk about is model building. So a nice thing about model building is, like, as you saw in the previous illustration, there's kind of a nice blend. Models can be diagrams, models can be sketches, models can transverse a wide range of things. You've already seen a video earlier on about how to build your own models, but I just want to say models don't necessarily have to be exact replicas of the building that you want to achieve. They can also start to illustrate vibes or concepts that you're trying to build in your project. So this is just one of OMA's models. As you can see, it's like there's not going to be a building that's going to have weird shrapnel in it. No, that's not going to happen. But it's illustrating a change in texture and architectural like design thinking from one part of the building to another, and that's why they use different materials. Here's some other examples. This is if you were to go a more concrete route of trying to really construct the shapes and forms. But as you can see, they're not using wood, which is the end result that you see on this side. They're still using chipboard and plexiglass and wood sticks. It's used as a tool to illustrate. So that's another tool to start to tell your story. And the final tool I'm going to talk about today is rendering and video. So rendering and video is one of the more modern tools that architects are using today. So, and I would say it's one of your most powerful tools if you are not strong in any of the other realms of drawing or diagramming or physical model building. I would say this is a really strong space to put your time and effort to build. On the bottom, you can see I have like a name called out. This is actually a firm that does rendering. So that's just an interesting topic tidbit. So I would look up rendering firms and look at the rendering that they're doing. I would say for rendering, the best way to learn how to do it good is to just look at renders. Like look a lot at renders. Renders don't necessarily have to be super exact to what's going on, but they do have to illustrate a vibe. I would say rendering is almost like the end kind of sentence to your story. When you've had all the elements designed out and you figured out all the problems, renderings, while they can help you get through that problem-solving process, at the end of the day, they illustrate the story for you. You know, like a picture tells you 1,000 words. It's like this image right here. This is the story this building was trying to relay. This is actually the same project that you saw previously with the OMA diagrams coming together. As you can see, this is the story they're trying to tell.
Hi, I'm Mick McNutt of GBBN Architects, work with Melanie Nagami, who just introduced to you the different tools that us architects use to really develop our design and tell the story of the building as we develop them. I wanted to dive a little deeper into a specific case study of one of GBBN's unbuilt projects. It is the Academic Success Center at the University of Pittsburgh. It's right on the corner of Forbes Avenue, where Hillman Library, their main central library, is, right across from the Cathedral of Learning and entry to Shenley Park. This site is occupied by, as I said, the library, academic buildings, and a lot of classrooms, but there wasn't any programs specifically for student services, so different academic resources or social, etc. So the idea was to insert a building devoted just for student activities as the Academic Success Center here to follow the students throughout their 4 or more years at the University of Pittsburgh. So in developing this project, we started with sketches and precedents. Here is a sketch example of the facade, studying the different metal panels, which are indicated with dots, and glazing glass, to understand the sort of pattern, the composition of this, and also scale within the context. The size of these were matched to the bays of windows on the Hillman Library that you saw on the previous slide. And then also looking at precedent, so these images sort of act like sketches because they're not an image of your building, but they're an image of a built building that you can reference here for materiality of the exterior skin, or starting to look at the interior spaces, really opening up. And since this is a student center, allowing people to move through and see the activity and movement throughout the building. Or just sort of materiality, pops of color to draw people through, lighting, etc. The second tool, which I think at GBBN, we really find this as a critical tool to sort of understand and take those sketches that are sort of brief brush strokes of ideas for the design and really apply them to the site, apply them to the specifics of the project. And here we knew we only had light from the south to the plaza, to the north to Forbes Avenue, the city, because it's a sliver site between Hillman Library and David Lawrence Hall classroom building. And with all the programs of these student groups, everyone that we met with said, well, can we be on the first floor? Because they want to be right there for the activity, people coming in, help recruiting, help show the activity. So what we did was use a stepped atrium that went back to the south for the views and the light. And this sort of open circulation space just continued throughout the building out to the main entrance on Forbes Avenue. So we always came back to this diagram to make sure that our design goals were being reached, as we found in that diagram. And the way we make those diagrams, we have a software, we have a digital file, a digital model of the building, but we also do physical models and prototyping to really test our ideas, to really see them physically. So here you see a cardboard cutout model and a 3D printed model to sort of understand how it fits within the site. Looked at the whole building. This really helps to understand the scale and impact to the context. And then in the digital case, that becomes a way to get renderings. We can look at the building, from the street side on Forbes, look at it at night or understand it at day, the difference between the lighting conditions and how its presence on the street. And then moving to the interior, starting to study color and materiality, move up through the building onto an upper level, understand back to that atrium space. And then on the second floor, this is one of the more open floors where you see the garden roof on the left and the atrium stepping up in the center. And again, these are not, one-offs. We didn't do these overnight. This was laborious, and we did multiple versions of these tools. The renders were studied, sketched over, back and forth, and a lot of iterations to come to sort of final design solution, to understand what to draw, to deliver to the contractor to construct the building. So that's an important thing to remember as you're using these tools. It's not a one and done. It's that you use them over and over and improve and change and evolve the design and are critical of what you produce in order to continually advance the design and your ideas. So the final that I want to leave you with is this as a video that we did. The client requested this to sort of help sell the project to other people who didn't see it develop throughout, and give a real sense of how it's occupied and what the spatial experience of it is. And it's also tied into their plan for Pitt, which is an overall university program to really direct how they evolve forward. So it was a good way to link the client's ideas and what their goals were to the actual building goals. So I leave you with this, and thank you.